He is 100 years old, and we had the honor, the tremendous honor of getting to know him during our time living and working in Germany as the U.S. ambassador. We can never forget the sinister rabbit hole through which humanity fell that allowed for the Nazis to rise and for totalitarianism and hate to flourish. We cannot allow any part of our world to again fall down that hole. We cannot lull ourselves into thinking that this is just something from history. We have to remain vigilant and uproot authoritarianism wherever it attempts to sprout. Never, ever, ever forget. Before I close, there have been two notable non-COVID passings that we must take a moment to acknowledge. The first is a guy I knew well, Arthur Imperatora Sr., founder of the New York Waterway Ferry and the man who almost single-handedly transformed the Hudson County waterfront. He grew up in the two-bedroom apartment above his immigrant father's grocery store in West New York, where he also worked as a boy. After returning from service in World War II, he was, by the way, a navigator on B-24 Liberators and B-29 Superfortresses. He started an interstate transport business with his brothers, and the rest, as they say, is history. He had numerous other business interests throughout his storied career, including owning the hockey team that would one day, and under different owners, ultimately become the New Jersey Devils. But he'll always be most connected with New York Waterway, which changed the way many commuted to work and which famously ferried survivors home on 9/11. And by the way, I'm one of those people whose commute changed thanks to Arthur. For all he did in his life and in business, Arthur was inducted into the New Jersey Hall of Fame in 2017, quite deservedly. Arthur was 95 years old when he passed on Wednesday. I spoke to his son, Arthur Jr. I reached out to his stepson. May he rest in peace, and I want to also thank him explicitly to his service to our nation. And that brings me to a second passing. This young man, United States Air Force Senior Airman Richard Samaru. Rico, as he was known by many, lived in North Brunswick, and I thank my dear friend Mac Womack, its mayor, for raising Rico's passing to me. He was only 21 when he passed away while on active duty at Osan Air Base in South Korea earlier this month. He was born in Guyana and came with his family to New Jersey in 2003 when he was just a young boy. He was a member of the North Brunswick High School class of 2017. His funeral is today, and he's being laid to rest at the Brigadier General William C. Doyle Veteran Cemetery, where I normally spend Memorial Day, not this year. And in his memory and honor, I am today ordering that all flags throughout the state of New Jersey will be lowered to half-staff this Monday, November 23rd. Before we leave Rico, I want you to look at that guy. I want you to also hear what I said, that his family immigrated to this country from Guyana. That is the United States of America that I know. A guy who immigrated here as a kid with his family, served our nation, and died for our nation, for our freedoms that we must never take for granted. We are the ultimate immigrant nation. May it always be that way, and may we never waver from being that beacon on the hill to the rest of the entire world. With that, please help me welcome the woman who needs no introduction, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persichilli.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon. Well, as the Governor shared, Pfizer announced this morning that it expects to apply today for the Emergency Use Authorization, EUA, from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for their COVID-19 vaccine. The application will be reviewed by the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, which is an independent group of experts that advises the FDA. This group, which includes scientists, physicians, infectious disease experts, and a consumer representative, will review the data, and they may ask for more information from Pfizer. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP, which advises the CDC, will also make recommendations to the CDC, and the CDC will then issue guidance before distribution of the vaccine. In anticipation of the approval of a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine, the Department of Health is working with many other state, federal, and local agencies to plan for a fast and equitable distribution of the vaccine to the New Jersey communities. Our goal is to vaccinate 70% of the adult population, or 4.7 million New Jerseyans, in 6 months. Prioritization of who will get vaccinated first is based on the CDC's playbook, which outlines 3 phases to this process. In Phase 1A, the first shipment of Pfizer vaccine will be reserved for paid and unpaid persons serving in healthcare settings who have the potential for direct and indirect exposure to patients or infected materials. This includes approximately 650,000 workers in New Jersey. It includes staff who work in hospitals, urgent care centers, community health centers, doctors and dentist offices, pharmacies, dialysis centers, and home health care workers. We consider staff and residents in long-term care facilities to be a high priority. There are 90,000 residents in our long-term care facilities, and they are served by 100,000 staff. The majority of long-term care facilities will be vaccinated through agreements that the federal government has set with CVS and Walgreens. The Pfizer vaccine, if approved, is expected to be available first in limited amounts in mid-December, followed shortly by vaccines manufactured by Moderna. The Pfizer vaccine is a 2-dose vaccine spaced 21 days apart. Moderna doses are spaced 28 days apart. So by the 3rd week of December, the state expects to receive 130,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, followed perhaps by the last week of December by another 130,000 Pfizer doses. There may be some overlap with Moderna by the end of December or the beginning of January. We then could receive another 2 shipments of Moderna of 100,000 each. So we could have between 400,000 and 460,000 doses of vaccine in the state by early January. We expect the vaccine to be shipped directly to hospitals with ultra-cold chain storage for the Pfizer vaccine, and those hospitals that have the ability to manage ultra-cold chain storage with the Pfizer shipping infrastructure system. About 40 of our New Jersey hospitals have told us that they do have capacity in their ultra-cold storage. We have more flexibility, by the way, with the Moderna vaccine. This vaccine requires refrigeration, which is available in all hospitals and pharmacies. As additional shipments of vaccine arrive, including Moderna, Phase 1B would include other essential workers, people at higher risk, including those over the age of 65, those with underlying medical conditions, and those who live in congregate settings. When we get to Phase 2, there will be a larger supply of vaccine. That would include anyone in Phase 1A and 1B who had yet been vaccinated, including critical populations and the general population. When we get to Phase 3, there should be sufficient supply in April or early May to meet the overall general population demand. While we wait for the vaccine to arrive, as Dr. Fauci has said, we need to actually double down on our public health measures as we're waiting for that help to come. We must continue to social distance, wear a mask, and wash our hands frequently, especially now that we have statewide community spread. We will also still need individuals to get tested and participate actively in the contact tracing process. As the governor outlined, we continue to expand access to testing in our state, particularly among our vulnerable populations and areas of the state that are seeing rapidly increasing cases. We've partnered with Optum to continue to provide testing opportunities in our urban centers, Elizabeth, Patterson, Newark, Trenton, Atlantic City, and Camden. To address hotspots, we've deployed both PCR and Binax tests to the following counties: Atlantic, Essex, Hudson, Mercer, Middlesex, Ocean, Passaic, and Union. In addition to use for our rapid test deployment, Binax tests have also been distributed to long-term care facilities and county testing sites. They will also be sent to hospitals, institutes of higher education, and K-12 schools. As we discussed last week, New Jersey will be among the few states receiving the Q rapid molecular test, which will be used at our state's veterans' homes. So moving on to my daily report, as the governor shared, our hospitals reported 2,505 hospitalizations. We are seeing increases in hospitalizations by about 100 to 150 a day. There are 452 individuals in critical care, and an astounding 51% of those critical care patients are now on ventilators. Fortunately, there are no new reports of multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children. Our state's veterans' homes, the numbers remain the same, and at our psychiatric hospitals, there is one new positive case at Ancora. The state positivity on November 16th overall is 7.98%. The northern part of the state is 8.18%, the central part of the state 7.45%, and the southern part of the state 8.84%. And that was November 16th. Posit today, it's up to about 11%. That concludes my daily report. Stay safe, and remember, for each of us, for us all, please take the call and download the COVID Alert NJ app. Thank you.
Judy, thank you for that, and thank you for all. We're going to keep moving along today because we're going to sign a bill right after this. But Judy, fair to say we'll hit vaccines again, likely on Monday with a little bit more. But that's a great framing, and the news is largely really good on the development side. The distribution's really complicated and expensive, and I don't think we can understate that. This is a never been done before sort of hurdle, which, listen, this is the United States of America. We could do stuff like that, but we got to make sure we get all oars rowing together. Colonel Pat Callahan, great to have you. Bless you. Over to you.
Thanks, Governor. Good afternoon. Just very briefly on compliance. ABC investigators, in partnership with Division of Criminal Justice investigators, went out last night on compliance inspections in Hudson County. They visited 51 licensed establishments, and of those 51 visited, 8 of those licensed establishments were cited for EO violations concerning capacity, facial coverings, and no social distancing. That's all I have, Governor.
Pat, thank you, and thank you for all. We'll start over here. We will be virtual. Dan Brown, where are you? Dan Brown will be virtual tomorrow and Sunday, and unless you're otherwise, we'll be live and in person at 1 o'clock on Monday. And again, we will sign Daniel's Law with a heavy heart right after this. I just read a quote that someone sent on to me. This is in an article. Shut the school down. Don't shut hockey down. You can go to school online. We got our priorities straight there. Dustin, over to you.
Perfect segue. Leadership of the NJEA said they're dismayed that you have downplayed the danger to students and staff by allowing in-person instruction, and that the data you're using to support keeping schools open is misleading at best. What's your response to that in general? But if the NJEA is correct, why are you not counting school-related activities like sports in the data? Have you contacted Mondelez officials about keeping the Nabisco factory in Fairlawn here? And if so, can you share any insight into that discussion or what your pitch was to stay in New Jersey? Several progressive groups are protesting a lack of diversity on the legislative redistricting panel, with much of their ire focused on the Democratic Party's failure to name a Latino, despite the growth of the Latino population over the past decade. Given your role as the de facto leader of the Democratic Party and your well-documented emphasis on diversity, what's your reaction to that and any defense of the lineup? Are you comfortable with the panel's composition? One last one from NBC. Do you have any reaction to the Howell police chief saying he won't enforce the 10-person limit at Thanksgiving unless it's egregious behavior? Thanks.
I thought you were going to ask me about hockey, by the way. You got me all excited about a hockey question, Dustin. Listen, we're on with the NJEA all the time, and I repeat what I said today, and I've said on many days, including recently. Educators are on the pedestal. They are heroic. They're at the front lines. This is not a normal school year. This is not a stress-free by any means. Bless them. I can't say enough good things about them. I don't have a whole lot more to add other than the data that we present is the data that is vetted, and we wouldn't present it if it weren't blessed by the Department of Education and the Department of Health. Again, but there is behavior outside of schools that does have a behavior on the inside, and we got to make sure we say that all the time. We got to make sure folks hear that, and that is absolutely the case. And we got to watch that like a hawk. But other than a hospital or a healthcare setting, when you look at the PPE barriers, one-way stairs and hallways, face coverings at all time, surfaces, hyper-hygiene, I don't know any structures indoors that are safer than our schools. And again, I think it's also fair to say, and again, we've had a great exchange back and forth on this with all stakeholders, including educators. It is safe to say, and I think a lot of people are coming to this conclusion, that it's an easier riddle for sort of the pre-K up through 8th grade than it is for the high school students who begin to feel their oats and feel like they're invincible. And we watch all of this, as you can imagine, including especially the folks who are in the upper grades. And again, bless our educators. Mondelez, I've spoken to the North American head on the phone. I've got a Zoom call with labor this afternoon. I've got a Zoom call again with the North American head. Too early to tell. It feels to me like they're consolidating their bakeries, East Coast, Central, West Coast, from multiple locations in each of those respective locations to one in each. I'm going to make the case that there's no better place to do business than New Jersey. I just can't fathom there's several hundred folks here who would be impacted and their families right now. I can't fathom the impact that would have on them. I think we're as good a place to do business as any in the United States, including, as I was proud to acknowledge earlier this week, the #1 port on the East Coast, #2 port in the country, Los Angeles. We love you, but we're coming after you. Quality of the talent. I mean, there's just an overwhelming reason to be here. Mondelez has, in addition to the Fairlawn facility, they've got over 1,000 people in other locations in New Jersey, but we're going to give it everything we've got. Yeah, I'm a big believer in diversity. I acknowledge and take the question and the point. I will say this, that I was gratified to see Sally Avalenda appointed as the executive director for the commission, and that represents a significant step in the right direction as it relates to diversity, and we continue to be pounding away. We are the most diverse state in the nation. Our administration puts the most diverse set of folks on the field every day in the history of this state, and that is what we aspire for every single day. I was told only of the Howell chief. I have no idea who this guy is, but I would just say it is the obligation, Pat, if you see this differently, you'll tell me. It's the obligation of all members of law enforcement, especially leadership, to enforce the laws and enforce the executive orders that are in place, particularly if the objective is the modest hope to save every life that we can. So this is not, and we don't condone, I think I speak for you here, we don't condone underage drinking, right? And it's illegal and we don't want it. This is not about some minor infraction. These executive orders are about saving people's lives. And folks need to be reminded of that. And by the way, overwhelmingly, law enforcement has been heroic. You talk about folks who are fatigued, Pat. I don't have to tell you, going out there every day enforcing compliance almost 9 months into this, like everything else in life, overwhelmingly extraordinary actors laying it out every day, and especially early in the pandemic, putting their own health at risk when people were being extreme knuckleheads. But we're still in the soup here. And these executive orders and these laws have got to be enforced, and that is literally to save people's lives. Do you have anything, sir, or no? No? Okay. Nikita, how are you?
I'm well, Governor. Yourself?
I'm well.
Great.
I'm as well as you can be right now.
Of course. So there are no announced plans for a Biden inauguration yet, but it's proceeding as though it's going to be a fairly major event. I'm wondering if you plan to attend yourself, and whether or not you have any recommendations for New Jersey Democrats who are thinking about traveling to D.C. for unofficial or official Biden inaugural events. Separately, I'm wondering if you have an opinion on whether legal guidance or opinions issued by Attorney General Graywall regarding the 2020 election and vote counting procedures to state and county election officials should be made public. Currently, they're shielded from disclosure by an attorney-client privilege. And lastly, on the election executive order from today, so does that make any changes to the recount deadline, which is also today? Because now you have a situation where counties might be certifying after the deadline to file for a recount has passed.
I'm going to wave in Paramount Garg from the bullpen for your second and third question in a second. I've got no insight onto the inaugural plans other than Joe Biden will be inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States at noon on January 20th. I would say, again, I've got no insight. I'd be surprised. This is one guy's personal opinion, given that we're still in the throes of this pandemic. I'd be surprised if it's business as usual. So I'd travel if I could travel safely, but right now we're telling people not to travel. Judy, I hope it's different 2 months from now, but I'm not sure it will be. I hope it is. I would just repeat something. You didn't ask this, but I will take this opportunity to say the following. Think of a triangle. There's a huge missing link right now. And if we don't solve this soon, people's lives are going to be put at risk, and I suspect lives will be lost. And I'll use us as an example. We have wide open, Judy, Pat, myself, the whole squad, Ed, we have wide open communication with the Trump administration on testing, on vaccines, on other matters. There's another call Monday afternoon, as I recall. We'll be on it. We have wide open communication with the Biden team. I've mentioned Vivek Murthy, Ashish Jha is on that team, Ron Klain, who battled Ebola as the czar, and that's wide open. And there's a fair amount of common consensus on some stuff, including timing on vaccines and the development. There is literally no link between those two camps. There's literally no link, which is unfathomable. And there's no question whose fault it is. It's these guys. And forget about, God bless you if you want to count every last vote and recount it again and go to court. And then if you didn't like that, go to court again. God bless you. That's not what I'd be doing, but that should be completely disconnected from making this link and by doing so saving lives. And it's despicable that that link has not been connected. Paramount, either on the Attorney General's opinions as well as on whether or not our extension of the deadline impacts the recount deadline.
On the Attorney General's guidelines, we would need to look at the specific guidances and see if there's anything we could disclose there, so we can get back to you. And on the recount piece, we'll circle back this afternoon.
It's a good question on the last one. We'll come back to you. Sir, good afternoon.
I just have one quick question to clarify from earlier. You said New Jersey hit 70,000 reported tests per day. Do you know exactly which day that was that we hit that threshold?
No, but we can get that for you. Is that it?
Yeah, that was it.
I may slip you a 20 after the press conference. Brett, you're out of your 20 opportunity.
So good news about the vaccine, but numbers for now still keep moving in the wrong direction. What's next for the state? Do you think pleading for cooperation is enough? Or do you see the state following Newark's lead and asking everyone to stay home for like 10 days to kind of get a grip on this? What's an update with the situation in nursing homes? I see deaths have been rising there in recent days a little bit more than usual. And we're getting reports about people waiting a long time for tests, even though we have a lot of them. What is the state doing about that?
Is that it? Yep. The news on vaccines, by the way, is unquestionably good, including, and again, this is all subject. We're not going to tell you. In fact, you and I are going to be first and second in line, I believe. Pat will be right with us. We're not going to take this vaccine. We're not going to recommend you take it unless we separately do our own tire kicking and putting our own holy water, led by Judy and the independent panels that she has in the state. But boy, it feels like it is going very meaningfully in the right direction. And you won't say it's safe unless it is safe. And if you do say it's safe, and I dare say when you say it's safe, we need everybody to get in line to get it. And again, it's going to be vulnerable populations, frontline workers, healthcare workers, the folks you'd expect us to have up front. The numbers are not going in a good direction, and we've said that is going to continue. I mean, I want to be unequivocal about this. If you look at our modeling, and again, we should put modeling up as sooner than later. I know we're going to hit vaccines hard again on Monday, but Dan, could you help us do a modeling discussion here? It is going to get unequivocally worse. And that includes everything from cases per day to hospitalizations. Can behavior impact that curve? You betcha. And we believe the combination with surgical action and pleading for responsibility will have an impact. And again, we don't just sort of take steps, Judy, Pat, myself, none of us take steps that are symbolic, that don't have any oomph under them. So when we saw restaurants, not all, but a lot of restaurants migrating toward a sort of sloppy environment after 10 o'clock, we took action. We've lowered the indoor limits. With all due respect to the guy with the hockey quote, we cut out interstate indoor sports. We're pushing back, NJSIA is actually pushing back the winter season. We're in a vortex of cold weather, where it's getting darker, and you've got one holiday after another. So we will continue to, everything is on the table. There's no necessarily obvious next up to bat. We would really like to see what's in place take hold. And I think through, for instance, non-essential businesses. People ask me about non-essential business, indoor dining all the time. By the way, indoor dining I put separate from where we know establishment X has had an outbreak. They've been, either they on their own or with the local health authorities we will combine, take the right step. But I mean just the known increased risk that we have when, Matt, you may want to just ask folks, the known increased risk that we have by more indoor activity that we've talked about. So people ask us all the time, indoor dining, non-essential retail, non-essential businesses. I just got to say this, as long as Mitch McConnell is sitting on his hands and not getting behind a major stimulus that I believe both the White House and I know Speaker Pelosi, with whom I spoke the other night, and so many others, Bob Menendez, Cory Booker, about to join us for the next bill signing. As long as he's sitting on his hands, you shut, without absolute evidence that there's spread and transmission, you shut essential, non-essential workplace or indoor dining, you're basically putting a bullet in them. And unless we see explicit transmission coming out of there, that's blood on our hands in a different respect. And it's shameful that they have not acted in Congress, especially McConnell and the Republican Senate, to throw a lifeline to small businesses. Listen, could you see a different scenario where there was that lifeline and you could afford, you had more latitude, say, you know what, we can afford to take a 2-week pause there because they're getting cash on the barrel in order to do that. That's the trade. That trade should be available. If Judy determines that those businesses are a place of transmission and we know they've got a lifeline that will keep them in business, that gives her and me more latitude to do something. And by the way, other states are talking about pauses. Rhode Island, take a look at Rhode Island's pause in their indoor dining. Their pause is coming down to 33%. We never went above 25%. So I'm glad they're taking a pause. Great governor, by the way. But also you got to parse through exactly what some of these steps actually mean. I'm just going to hit tests and waiting. I think we hit that earlier. There are long lines. We have enormous sympathy for folks waiting in long lines, which is why we are plussing up more testing resources as we went through earlier, especially into hotspots, and encouraging people, if you can, to get tested on weekends where we know the lines are less. And we're going to continue to put as much up against that as we can. By the way, we've also said this, Brent, this is not a New Jersey only thing. You look at Philadelphia, I saw pictures earlier today, around the country, this is raging, and that puts a supply, that means more demand, and it puts a strain on the reagents and other supply side stuff. Judy, any comments on nursing home transmission? You said that deaths are, cases or deaths are up.
lately?
We have calls with nursing homes almost every day now. We have over 260 outbreaks that we're monitoring, and our goal is to work with them to increase testing of everyone that enters the facilities. So next week, I expect that we'll be putting out some pretty aggressive guidance on testing in our nursing homes.
As they say, I'm not sure this is in sports or in the movies. That's all she wrote. So let's mask up. Again, I have the honor in a few minutes with an august group, including both of our United States senators, all prime sponsors, Judge Esther Salas and her family, Chief Justice Stu Rabner, to sign Daniel's law into law. God bless that lad. He will remain forever in our prayers, and this will forever stand as a memory to him and as a legacy and as a step in a direction that sadly needs to be taken. So I want to thank Judy and Ed. As always, Ed, we didn't pull you in from the bullpen today. I hope it was still worth the trip. Pat, thank you for everything. Jared, Paramel, Dan. Again, Tammy Murphy, thank you. Paramel. Virtual, not Paramel, virtual this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Monday at 1 o'clock right here. Not sure yet of our schedule next week with Thanksgiving. Just ask folks, bear down everybody. I know this stinks. I know you've got fatigue. Who could blame you? I know we all do. Keep these on. Keep away from each other. We have good weather today and tomorrow. It's going to be decent Sunday, but colder. But today and tomorrow is really decent. So get outside, folks. Stay out there safely. Enjoy it. And we got Thanksgiving next weekend. Again, I'm begging you, keep it to your immediate family, please. Do everything you can to protect multi-generational, particularly older members of the family. Don't cross bubbles. If you've got kids, as we do, who have been at college, they got to either self-quarantine there and get tested or continue that process here. Again, it's not normal. It's not fun. We get it. But I will tell you this. Between personal responsibility and exceptional New Jersey behavior, and we've proven this already to the rest of the country that nobody can do this better than we can, and you add to that more testing, and far more importantly, vaccines that are real, that are coming, that will be safe. We won't recommend it unless they're not, and we have an overwhelming sense they will be. You start looking at distribution as early as next month, potentially, and then by April or May, broad access. We're in a completely different place. So this is it. This is crunch time. This is the locker room. The next 6 to 8 weeks are the Super Bowl. We got to win it. Thank you all, and God bless you.